You know, the Fed sloppers love to say that Candace doesn't care about getting to the truth. She doesn't care about Charlie. All she cares about is clicks and money and attention. Usually, our first instinct is to say, who cares what they think? Candace is getting to the truth. They're nothing but a bunch of liars. It does matter what they think. They make the gears of the court system turn. You know, they make the world go round when it comes to geopolitics. It does matter what they think. And what they think is that she cares a whole lot about this issue. She cares a whole lot about getting to the truth. And they know she's done a whole lot of work to get to it, and she's found a lot of it. Why would they set up this debate? Think about it for a second. Why? You could say why they would set up a debate. Okay, maybe I'd listen to some of that. They just want to change public sentiment. Maybe they think they have a few good points they can get out there and maybe swing some people or whatever the case may be. But that's not what this is, because they sent a guy who had no points. All he had was a Fed slop narrative. I mean, he spent time basically arguing with himself more than anything. He wasn't himself either in this debate. I mean, it's one thing he didn't know the charges, um, but it's another thing to know that Andrew Wilson is a type that normally, when he comes into a debate, he knows things like that. He knows them very specifically. He'd probably find a way to say, how does this not fit him? How does that not fit him? Here's the letter of the law, and he'd find the one weak part of the law. He's usually very calculated. Like I said in my last video, with the minutia, with debate rules, with having his structure to his arguments. He didn't have arguments. His whole thing was, you have to prove to me that what you're saying is true. No, she doesn't. Not at all. Both of you were just putting theories out there. I said it in the video leading into this. Now, I can't say that it totally clicked to me what they were doing here then, but that's all it was. He was representing the state's theories, the state against Tyler Robinson. She was representing the other theories. And basically, to a lot of us, she was representing reasonable doubt. Well, the point that I've seen parroted by, what is his name, Graham Allen or whatever, and several other people, is they keep using this phrase as something along the lines of like, Candace didn't have any hard facts, she still doesn't. Think about that. They're really focused on what she had before the debate and what she has after the debate, meaning that would change. That means they were hoping to get just a little something extra out of her that she was saving. That's why Andrew made the joke about trickling the stuff out, or whatever phrase he used to describe it. Let me just quickly explain what I'm getting at, and then I'll go a little bit more in depth real quick on other places you see it, what it means, what their goal from it was. But the goal is actually pretty simple. You guys will understand that. Hey, kitty. So they sent a tomato can in there. For those of you who don't know, that's like an old boxing term. I think they even use it in Rocky. But you can apply it to wrestling too. A tomato can was usually a journeyman fighter who had no chance of beating your guy, but it's like a warm up for him. He beats up on you till he gets to his next big fight, and Tomato Can's happy to do it. He gets some work, he makes some money. He usually gives a pretty decent fight. Maybe they let him. I don't know. It's a dirty sport, just like the rest of them. But the point is, there's another way tomato cans are used. And the way the tomato can was used by good promoters, good managers in boxing, was say you got a guy, we'll say on your bench, whatever, at your gym. Excuse me, I got to do the Andrew thing. Say you got a guy who you think that in a year or two has a shot at being the champion of the world. You know who he's going to have to go through to get that championship. And there's maybe no fight set up for that champion yet, or whatever the case may be. You need to study certain things. You need to find flaws in his game. You need to figure out where he's weak, where he's strong. So what you do is you take one of your lesser fighters that you have in your gym, you put him out there, you offer him as the tomato can, and you have him do certain things in the ring that maybe he usually wouldn't do. You're trying to provoke the current champion to show what he's got, to show what he doesn't have. Basically, I mean, you're throwing him in there as, they say a crash test dummy, but it's a little more than that. But you are collecting data, just like from the crash test dummy. So meanwhile, I mean, the other promoter may know exactly what you're doing, but meanwhile, they just think, hey, here's a tomato can guy. Let's whoop through him real quick, warm up for the big fight, or whatever. The fans have been begging for a fight. Nobody else is ready. Let's just, it'll be a good draw too, because this guy has the guts to fight him, and he's 42 years old or whatever. So send the tomato can out there to get beat up. While he gets beat up, the champion has to make it kind of interesting, so he doesn't just get beat up and beat in 30 seconds. This isn't early Mike Tyson career we're talking about here. Basically, you're gathering intel. You're finding out what he's trained on recently, what he hasn't trained on, how his cardio is. Does he still slip that hand, when he goes in for a cross? You're trying to pick up on things that have changed since his previous fights, especially if he's a champion who just tore through people. You didn't get to see much. So you're sending that tomato can out there as an insurance policy and possibly an advantage for your aspiring champion later. Does that make sense? Why is Andrew Wilson a tomato can? He knows nothing about the case. He wasn't a friend of Charlie's. If you're really trying to have a debate that was coming from the right place, supposedly, if you really wanted to convince people that Candace's arguments are not in the best interest, as far as preserving Charlie's legacy and getting to the truth, you would have put somebody out there that loved him. And you would have shown this is what someone who loves Charlie is really like. You would have put those two people together that cared about him. Oh, hey, kitty. I don't think you can see him. Anyway, I'm out here with the street cats and whatnot, the alley cats. You would have put, if it was really about the debate and just proving your point and wanting to bring people over to your side, you would put somebody in there who's an absolute expert on this case, who knows everything. Maybe they're a little more inside than people realize. They know every piece of evidence. They know every trick she's going to try to pull. Every possible thing that she has that she hasn't used yet. She knows all, or they know everything. So this wasn't about the emotional part of it, trying to convince, the public that they'd be on the right side of history by backing your narrative. It wasn't about a real debate to get to the truth. What was it? You got a guy who knows nothing about the case. Never mind the 7 charges. Yes, it's very important. And I will say that Andrew Wilson is usually the type of guy who's going to know those charges. And he's even going to be able to cite for you exactly what they say, at least a good portion of it. That's what he does. I've watched this guy debate a lot because I'm kind of an aspiring debater. He usually has his facts down pat. He's got a structured plan of attack. He's got, inquiries, or he's got answers that you wouldn't expect to be run of the mill. He catches people off guard a bit. He had none of that. He had absolutely nothing. He came in there blind. He came in there just repeating the same talking points that we keep hearing. He literally just, like he's reading from a newspaper. He was reading off the same stuff that we already know that they're trying to sell us on. Meanwhile, he would put the ludicrous stuff out there and bumble around. And Candace, people said that Candace was talking too much or whatever the case may be. You know, they're trying to say it as an insult, as though she just kind of hogged for attention or whatever they're saying. No, she did talk too much. She made it clear, here's what we know. I like that she always says we, being that, you know, the mommy sleuths and daddy sleuths are out here. Like, we're all part of the same gang, basically, you know. But they were just fishing for information. There's something else that they were doing too that I'll say here in a minute. But I was right about a lot of things. Go back and watch the affidavit episode. / you'll see a thumbnail and make you laugh. It's Andrew Wilson wearing a kippah, and us laughing at him. But anyway, watch that video. I predicted a few things. They're simple things, but that basically looking at it now, I didn't really say it this way then because I had the excitement that everybody else had to watch it, but it was a useless debate. And that's exactly why I think they were doing something else, like gaining intel. Think about it. Nobody from that side was going to be convinced by something Candace said just because she had a little bit better of a connecting argument for it. Nobody on, vice versa. You weren't changing any minds. So it's a useless debate. So you got a useless debate. You got a useless dude. No offense, Andrew Wilson, but you know nothing about the case. You aren't a person that they put out there like, this is Charlie's friend. You're not a person that they put up there to really win the debate. Because what was there to be gained? I mean, Candace basically podcasts every single day. She shares every lead, sort of. She's always got a couple up her sleeve. When is she going to use them? Just next week when she planned during her show? Or is she going to go ahead and spill the beans early because she's in this giant debate with millions of people watching where she thinks she can get some attention on this issue from normies and let the system, law enforcement, even the White House know that we the people aren't screwing around? They don't do stuff like this unless they already think we're not screwing around. They see the numbers. They see where we're at. They see who and what it is we object to. And they're not trying to change our minds on any of this. This was a digging expedition, and that's all it was. Meanwhile, you may say to yourself, oh, Andrew wouldn't want to do that. Yeah, he would. Because at the end of the day, he gets to feel like the smart guy. I mean, this guy's got a lot of hubris, man. Like, seriously. He can use whatever tone to speak that he wants to. But it's quite obvious. He gets to feel like he's a smart guy. He gets to be kind of a part of he basically almost gets to be Charlie in his eyes. He gets to work hand in hand with, the right wing. It gets him in good with politicians and movers and shakers and things. I mean, the guy he made good money. I heard him talk about it. If it was true, he made good money as a plant worker. I'm from Michigan, so kind of what he was describing, I could see it being true. And he started doing this debate thing during COVID. He started making real money from it, and, he decided to do it full time. Kind of like Barron decided to do it full time. He's a guy who, really clearly wants to take another step. To him, he was about as far in his career as he's ever going to get. So he did this. Is he just going to be like, oh, I do this for fun and I get paid? No, he's a competitive guy. He's full of hubris. He wants to be the guy. And like I said, kind of like Charlie Kirk, he wants to be the guy who's out here debating on the side of the right. You may say, well, he lost. And he did. Let's just be in all seriousness, he lost. I'm not saying this as a Candace fan. I actually went into it thinking there was going to be some big flaws in her debate. I didn't care if she won or lost, but I was expecting it to be a little tighter. But anyways, he doesn't lose a spot. Think about Douglas Murray. It's totally eviscerated by Dave Smith. Does Douglas Murray lose his clout as a historian? Do they stop putting him in debates and things? I'm pretty sure they haven't. In other words, he's a part of that team now. And in fact, it's almost a humiliation ritual. In fact, by humiliation ritual, it sounds really dramatic, but what it really comes down to is, do you abandon your ideals to have a spot on the team? It's almost like if you've always been stuck on playing a particular position and you damn well deserve it, you allow yourself to become a bench player, a guy who never plays at all, just to be a part of that team, just to be a Yankee or something. I say that because I hate the Yankees. But just to be a part and to win a title. That's it. Hopefully I haven't rambled in too many different directions with this. I know how my mind works, and I connect things in certain ways that go a few layers too deep. And it's like I feel like I got to unravel it all and show people, where everything is wrapped around inside of my head and how it got there in order to walk them through it. But most of the time people, and I'm sure you are, going, no, I get it, man, chill. It's not that I underestimate people. I may overestimate how complicated I make things on myself and others. So I just wanted to say this. And there's a guy, dude, I don't know your name. I hope you do watch this video. I just talked to you in your comments. You're a guy who worked in PsyOps and stuff like that. I believe you're doing an interview with Dee Dee tomorrow. You kind of inspired me to do this because it had been bouncing around in my head a little bit and stuff. When I heard you talk, I don't know, it just clicked. I said, yeah, I know what they did here. The whole time in my gut. That's why you say you got to trust your gut. They've taught us to not do that over the past several years. In my gut, I felt like, what is this debate for other than entertainment? You know, everybody involved has plenty of money, specifically on their side. Think about it. Meanwhile, Candace, I guess, got paid $300,000 or $500,000 or something, and she'll definitely give it to like Preborn or something because she's a great person. You know, she's not going to keep that money. But they paid for her to share whatever stuff we were hiding. She was hiding. Whatever stuff hadn't been sussed out yet. They wanted to know where we are as this trial progresses. And the other part that I was saying that ties in, the other thing that they're doing, they're stuck with this prosecution, with this trial. And there's been just a world of effery that we're just not buying. They are smart enough to know that, I guess. Usually they can't check the temperature in a room to save their lives. But so they need to change the perception of people a bit, or change. They need to find out what the people's expectations are, and they need to figure out how it is that they can spin this trial, this narrative, or whatever, to try and make it seem as though they're fighting for the American people and for justice, and they just kind of screwed up. You know, it's just another one of those things, kind of like with, you know, assassination attempts, where everybody just does their job completely wrong on the exact same day and time when it's the most important. Everybody's new too. Doesn't it remind you of this Trump thing? That's a whole different video. But the point is, they want to figure out exactly what we're expecting at this point, because Candace and others changed our expectations. You know, maybe before we didn't need much to convince us. Now we needed a little more. They wanted to make sure of that, or were we just taking this as kind of like entertainment? So they figured that out, where we're at as far as what we require to be convinced that things are on the up and up, or at least they're trying to make them on the up and up. And this is where they choose scapegoats. They're never going to choose that, oh, we did all of this wrong from the start and it was all an operation. Absolutely not. Oh, wow, my arm's bleeding. Look at that. God, a bug bit me earlier and I've been scratching at it. Jesus. Anyway, they need to change the way the public looks at things. And they did try to do some kind of brainwashy type of thing. And they've been doing it with this by constantly reiterating that we have to prove our side. We have to prove our side. You know, and it's like, okay, you could kind of say that because this is just like, I guess you could say a weak-ass battle of wits until it goes to a real trial. But when it's in a real trial, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. All you got to do is create reasonable doubt. So there isn't some, you know, burden of proof isn't on us in that situation, isn't on Tyler's defense. They just have to create an environment where you can see at least one other person or scenario playing out. So they've been trying to flip all of that on us before the trial even starts. They've been saying, hey, you have to prove your theory to be allowed to challenge my theory. Why? This is one of the things I brought up in the video the other day. At the end, run by myself just like this, but I was pacing around. Theirs is just a theory right now. Like Candace kept pointing out, and I'm so glad that she did. And I hope she had this whole concept in mind when she did this. She pointed out that it can be completely hearsay in order to hold the guy and find probable cause. You don't need much. You know, you don't need much to prove probable cause. They're trying to kind of change the way that we look at things to go, well, you know, I have this other idea what could have happened, and the defense has this idea what could have happened, but man, we can't prove it. We can't prove it, and we need somebody in jail for this, and I'm pretty damn sure he was involved. That's not the way the justice system works, man, or it's not supposed to. You need to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this guy did it. His life is on the line. What you're going to see from this, the only way that they can turn this thing around is they're going to have to say, just an example, this isn't, you know, literal. I'm not saying they're going to do this for sure, but they'll, you know, fire a guy that's in a computer lab. Why would they do that? Oh, because he's the guy that got so emotionally involved in the case, low-key, that he messed around and scrunched the picture because he thought he'd be helping the case if he did it. You fire a guy. Or, you know, any of the other, I was going to pick one, but there's 100 of them. There's 100 things wrong that you could easily blame on a person. Once that is thrown out of the situation, it makes them look, you know, honest all over again. And by the time you go finish the trial out, people are looking at you in a little more positive light. I don't know that this trial itself is even that important, though. I'm not sure that that's what this is about. I think it's more just about knowing what we expect in any situation as important as this and as public as this, and being able to maneuver around it. You know, they probably got 100 different AI models where whoever gets the best one gets a big bonus and stuff, you know, in order to take the things that the probability of this thing and that thing that we want to see in order for something to be proven. And same thing for, like, in order for us to have some kind of trust in the administration or whatever the case may be. And they're going to implement that going forward. So this whole thing, this whole trial, I would even say maybe the assassination itself, not maybe, almost completely, is just a big test Just an experiment, just like we call America the Great Experiment. So I mean, that's how I'm looking at this. We have a video that we're putting out tomorrow. We have decided exactly what we think happened in this situation. I'm talking about what we think happened with the event itself, the bang. You know, at the beginning, we believed one theory that sounded really out there, but we presented a good case for it. As time went on, we saw different things that, I mean, it's gotten to the point where there's not many more things that we need to see. Almost everything's there, at least from a standpoint of what probably didn't happen. There's only so many things left. We're not claiming to know the exact weapon or any of that kind of stuff, but something really clicked. And shout out to, I believe Dee Dee and, I think it was Dee Dee and Jesse were talking about something, and it just clicked to me. And what's funny is, like, it actually, the point they were proving with it is the opposite of the point that clicked for me. I just had to learn two things could be true at the same time. Two things that maybe seemed opposing. I feel like it's irrefutable proof that this went a certain way. Horrible pun, but I mean, I think that it puts the last nail in the coffin as far as to whether or not anybody can argue he's alive, he's not alive, that kind of thing. I think we kind of solved that one. But shout out to every content creator out there who's been contributing to this. It's incredible. The vast majority of you guys, I can tell your heart's in the right place. You're doing this for the right reasons, and I love to see that. Unfortunately, the federal government, the powers that be, the mainstream media are pretty much always our adversary. We need to stop being each other's adversary. That is one thing I'd like to add. I've seen them say it like, the cult is imploding, or the conspiracy wackos, or whatever wording they use. We were imploding. We were having a civil war. There were some disagreements that I thought were silly, because as much as I want to get my point across, and as much as I may think that it's true, maybe I know, even if I knew 100% that it's true, the other people that are trying to show you their theories and things, they're on our side. Point blank period. They are on our side. And we have the truth on our side. And the truth does always prevail. It may take some time. Just like any valuable change in a society, or anything that's worth anything usually takes some time. But just remember that debate wasn't a debate. They sent a guy out there that was a tomato can. He knew nothing about the case. He had nothing to offer for Candace to make her change her mind. He offered nothing for any of her fans to possibly change their mind, for him or for them. He wasn't going to scratch a W in the column for himself. There was nothing. He had nothing to present. Not a damn thing. So why is he there? Why did it happen? Just money? Well, wait a minute. He offered money to do it. You see what I'm saying? Right around the time he went and did some work for them. I don't care if it's for one day or not. I've got issues with that just on a theological level that shows that he's a true sellout, a person who has absolutely no dignity whatsoever. I'll go ahead and say it. You got a guy who's supposedly vehemently anti-Zionist, who's on our team, quote unquote, a noticer, if you will. And he's got his own theology behind it. But he goes and trains, even if it's for one day. I mean, the Zios of all Zios. Anybody who's debating at a TPUSA is going to be debating nothing but Zionist talking points. He goes there and trains them to be better at it. I shouldn't even have to add on to that. It's disgusting. It's more disgusting for himself. I mean, it doesn't make a difference in the grand scheme, even if he thinks it does. And I hope the money was worth it. The amount of money he lost over time by doing that has got to be immense. He was really on his way up. And like I said, he's going to have a job. He'll always have a job. He'll always have debates he can do for money. Who knows? He'll get this sponsorship, that sponsorship. He'll do this appearance, that appearance. This thing is going to lead to a lot for him from the neocon side of everything. It's going to benefit him. But he'll be another guy that has a constant job, not a guy who comes out there and really crushes it because he's anti-establishment, because he's only about what it is he feels within himself, only about what he knows the people that follow him represent, only about the truth. He's never going to have that. He's never going to feel that satisfaction. He's never going to contribute to change in the world. Well, maybe negative change. He's just always going to have a job with them now because he shilled for them. Benny Johnson will always have some kind of job, with the right. There's a bunch of people like him. We're always going to have a position within. It's just one big corporation. He'll always have a job. And he'll convince himself he's like the most important guy. He's the one guy who gets to really be himself because he'll still do debates that are, anti-Zionist or whatever. That doesn't mean a damn thing to them. They even have control over exactly how much influence you have. They could pull the plug on you at the worst time at some point. They did it to Charlie Kirk. They won't do it to you, bro? Oh, I love it. You want to be the next Charlie Kirk. You do, clearly. I think you need to say that out loud to yourself a few times. I think it was it Jadakiss or Styles from the Locks that said, brothers want to be Scarface, must not have seen the end of the movie. That's where you're at, bro. Your best case scenario is that you're just going to be a shill who has plenty of work, but you're never the guy in anything. You don't actually matter to anybody. And, occasionally, I don't know, you're an analyst maybe. Maybe they talk to you for 3 minutes on Fox and stuff like that. Maybe they have you go on Piers even more. And you feel like you're doing the right thing because you still get to, like you said, represent the conservative side of what's essentially a supposed political and cultural war against the left. And like you said, you disagree with a lot of things with TPUSA, but they were the biggest, most successful conservative, like youth outreach, whatever you call it, organization there was, and that they're needed. In all honesty, bro, what are you, ecumenical now? If you actually believe that it's okay to click up with people who have serious eschatological, like eternal differences with you, and a lot of other bad things that would group into, I disagree with a lot of things that they talk about. You're definitely looking at things the wrong way. You could have really made a difference, truly. I think you could have. You're pretty good at doing what you do. Me, I'm a writer and a small business promoter and whatnot. But however, I've decided, like you'll also hear in our new video here tomorrow, I've decided to put myself out there for debate on many different topics. I just have to hear what the topic is and decide that you want to represent, what you want to debate, any of you. And I'll gladly do it if it fits a topic that I think is important for the world right now, and that I'm strong enough in to represent. But I'll close this out. I'm going on and on. I need to go to bed, but